to the metal when I'm getting to the bag, ayy. Got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast, ayy, ayy. Let them all cross, if they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss, ayy.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Friday, everybody. It's a holiday weekend, so we're going to jump right into the show. I got a very special guest for you guys here today. I always like talking to trucking associations and other advocacy groups out there, because at the end of the day, you guys, when you're out there putting policy that really changes the landscape to the industry, I feel like we live in a day and age where people think making a post on social media is just going to go and all of a sudden change laws and rules and regulations to benefit our industry. But that couldn't be further from the truth. We need people advocating for us on Capitol Hill, in DC, and at the state level and everything else. So with that being said, I have Mr. Ben Greenberg of the North Carolina Trucking Association on the show today. Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to join me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure. I was jamming out a little bit to the intro there.
Yeah, it only took me about 1,200 episodes to find the right intro for this song, man. We switched it up a few times, and my team behind the scenes, they deserve all the credit for this. They had sent me a bunch of different choices, and I'm like, yeah, that's the one. That's the one I've been looking for out there, and we're going to roll with that.
Absolutely.
So, dude, how did you get your start in trucking or at the North Carolina Trucking Association?
Yeah, so I got my trucking start by picking trucking. You know, a lot of people are born into it. I kind of adopted it, and it's adopted me. I went to law school and got my law license. And, you know, when you're in law school, you don't really get told what to do with that law license, right? You can do whatever you want. You could do family law, you could do traffic tickets, criminal, all things under the umbrella. I knew I wanted to be in a courtroom. I just didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with that. And then when I got into my practice, I was kind of looking around at the people that I respected at the firm and was trying to make my path on how can I be like them. And I realized very quickly that a lot of them were generalists, and the only way to be as good of a generalist would be to go the long haul, do it for 25 years. And I was a little impatient kind of with my personal career and thought, well, what if I just pick an industry niche and just focus on that completely, get to know that industry better, have a higher volume of those types of cases, and then feel like I could be that kind of expert in that particular field. And I did that. I kind of looked around at the work that I had. You know, I had some municipal work, some nursing, manufacturing, retail. I was lucky to have some exposure to transportation and trucking. And I was just drawn to working with those folks. They reminded me of the people that I grew up with, kind of hardworking, salt of the earth, work hard, play hard. And unfortunately, they have a lot of risk. And so they have to work with lawyers more than your average industry. And so on the same token, they were more of sophisticated recipients of legal services, were looking to move the needle on their program and not just on individual claims. And I was just drawn to it, said, yes, this is what I'm going to do. But then I had to figure out, you know, how am I going to learn this stuff? And thankfully, the North Carolina Trucking Association was an option to just start attending events. So I signed up, sat in the back of the room, volunteered my time, and then learned, right? Because, you know, we're kind of like the military in trucking. We use specialized terminology. We love an acronym for anything that we can. Yeah. We've got words like lumper, reefer. You know, I'm like, I didn't think they could do reefer while they're driving trucks, but I'll figure that out later. But that was sort of the path that I set out on, and it's been incredibly good to me and my family.
Dude, that's awesome, man. And I like, you know, for me, I've had transportation specific attorneys on the show a bunch. I got some really good friends out there in the industry who come on, and, you know, we always like to say anytime a lawyer's on the show, you guys, none of this is legal advice. Ben's not your attorney. I'm definitely not an attorney. And if you need an attorney, go consult one. But I look at it is I say, you know, because I've been self-employed now for over 5 years, and I say that the two best decisions I made in my business was to get the right attorney and the right CPA behind the back, right? Because it's like and I think a lot of people, when they go into business, we go into business based on our skill set, right? Like I've been a freight broker my entire career. I know trucking, man. I know the ins and outs of this stuff, but business, legal, structure, all of that, completely different ballgame. And you need to bring both elements to there. And, a lot of, I grew up in a trucking family. Like my dad was an owner op. He drove for 40 years. My family's been in trucking since for almost 100 years now. And I look at it as a lot of these individuals that are out there, man, they just want to drive, right? Like they want to go do what they do best. But at the end of the day, and I think we're seeing a lot of this right now in current events in the industry, there's a lot of policy that is out there where we're starting to be like, wait a second, this isn't right. All right. Like, and especially from the people who are in the industry. And most of these bureaucrats in DC and other places, they couldn't even tell you how many wheels are on a truck at the end of the day, outside of the photo ops that they take when they go around with their generic smiles and crap like that, right? So it's like, we need people who are in the industry, in groups like the North Carolina Trucking Association. I'm friends with the Minnesota Trucking Association and stuff like that. Like they sit there and listen to their members, and then they take this stuff and then they bring it to the state Capitol Hill and DC and stuff to really fight for real policy change.
No, yeah, you're 100%. You're right. Particularly when you go to Congress, which we'll be there next week doing our call on Washington. I know I look young, you look young, but when you meet some congressional staffers, they look like they were just coming out of high school, and you can kind of see them. You're talking about a tractor and there's a trailer, and you can see them kind of trying to diagram, what exactly they're putting together. And you're 100% right. We don't have enough industry folks in those legislative bodies because they're busy trucking, that our job from an educational standpoint is so significant. So we have to be at that table because we're frequently getting talked about, and we're frequently on that table if we're not there. So it's incredibly important to find some way to advocate in person, to tell the real stories of trucking and educate those lawmakers on our pain points, because they just don't know.
Yeah. So like with you say you're going to DC here next week, man.
Yeah.
What are some of your guys' top legislative agendas that you guys are bringing to the table out there?
Yeah, the biggest issue is putting some stopgaps up for nuclear verdicts. That's something that we're working on at the federal level. You probably had some folks on talk about state level efforts in that space. We've had some nice wins, in Iowa, Georgia, Florida, and I'm sure I'm missing some states recently where they've been able to fix their legal systems a little bit. But the reality is trucking is interstate, right? And so we kind of need a federal one size fits all fix. And so without boring you too much and going into the weeds, one of the big things that we're looking for is to get more cases in federal court. And basic concept is federal judges are appointed for life. They're going to be less beholden to the community that they live in with their evidentiary rulings, right? Mm-hmm. They're gatekeepers of what the jury hears, and what the jury hears makes a big difference on these verdicts. And so if you've got a state elected judge, that's trying to decide between a business and a member of the community that elected him, you could see how some of that bias and or prejudice could impact rulings. And so any defense lawyer that you talk to is going to want to be in federal court to defend a company. And so we want to provide a better forum to get more trucking cases of a certain dollar value in federal court, so trucking companies get a fair opportunity to defend themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and make any accusations and say that judges can be bought and paid for through campaign. We're not saying that, but I think that's a very good point, Ben, because at the end of the day, I feel like the trucking industry as a whole has been like under literal attack here over the last decade at least. But talking about nuclear verdicts that are out there, a lot of these trucks are, and you see it. I mean, I've had a lot of guys on this show who are in the compliance side of things. They talk, they post crash data and like cam footage and stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, the amount of stuff that these individuals go through out on the road is like, I mean, the last thing they need is like being an unfair judgment through a nuclear verdict because somebody cut them off and then they can't prove it because they don't have cams, right? And it's like, and that's why it's like, because I talk about dash cams and, and inward and outward facing cameras on this show and stuff like that. And I get the privacy aspect of it that is out there. But like, as a business owner myself, if I own trucks and have them out on the road, I would want to protect our assets from this, right? Because how many of these outward facing cameras instantly eliminate a potential nuclear verdict because it shows that the driver was not at fault? And I feel like that's kind of the stance a lot of these individuals need to start looking at is like, if nuclear verdicts continue at the level that they are, I hope they don't. what are you going to do to protect your business, right? Because again, if you don't have any way to prove that you weren't doing that, all it takes is a really good attorney to convince the jury that you didn't do something.
No, that's 100% right. And then the other unfortunate reality is that people are getting priced out of the market without even being involved in an accident, right? You're seeing double-digit increases on your insurance auto policies because of these nuclear verdicts. And these are folks that are not having claims. So it's not even a matter of being in the situation of having to defend yourself. It's you're getting battered with the crossfire from these verdicts that are happening in the auto insurance space.
Yeah, and so I mean that's another really good point. So like, what's the general consensus out there from a lot of your guys' members, right? Like I had Maria Ivanoff on the show here recently, and it was funny because she's like, oh, actually, I'm going to speak at the North Carolina Trucking Association conference that next day or
Yeah.
next week, I believe. And her and I got into a lot of really good topics on that episode there. But it's like, what's the general consensus from your members right now about kind of the state of the industry? And that might be an overarching question, but I feel like there's a
Sure.
lot of just general frustrations out there from the trucking community in regards to rising costs and insurance and everything.
Yeah, we're a very diverse organization. So we've got folks in all different lanes, operations, dump truck haulers, we've got movers, we've got over the road LTL truckload. And so it's hard to always speak because we're not a monolith, but
Yeah.
general consensus is that insurance has gotten out of control. And again, these are folks that are not having claims, that are seeing double-digit increases, that they're just fighting to stay in business without even being involved in collisions. And so I think there's a sort of a clear understanding that something has got to give. This is critical infrastructure, right? People don't always think about it that way, but in North Carolina, 85.6% of communities are reliant on truck for their freight. They have to have it, but they're being priced out, and that's causing a lot of this inflationary pressure that your everyday citizens are seeing when they're going to the grocery store, going to restaurants, or buying any of their essentials.
Mm-hmm. It's, I look at like, what are some of those things that some of your guys' members have used to maybe offset some of this stuff, right? Because I'm assuming, again, I don't know you guys. This is literally the first time Ben and I have ever like met at the end of the day. But I'm like, what are some of those best practices that some of you guys talk about out there that it's like, hey guys, this is how we're offsetting this? Because at the end of the day, there's always going to be something, right? Like
Right.
Whether you're a business owner, there's always going to be something that you could perceive as prohibiting you from being able to make it. So are you guys out there working with your members and putting on workshops of like, what are some best practices we can do to stay in business and really weather these peaks and valleys?
Yeah, so specifically in the legal defense framework, we put on a litigation workshop once a year. We'll get the brightest minds in trucking that are lawyers to put on a full day seminar in North Carolina for those members, just to talk about best practices. A lot of folks are having to take on more risk, right? Some folks are going to captives, other folks are taking higher retentions to be able to just keep the lights on in the auto insurance world. But then more importantly, we're not just complaining about it, we're doing something about it. We'll have a group of 15 folks in DC next week. We're at the General Assembly in North Carolina every month that they're in session, bringing people up to tell these sort of real stories of trucking, to push for reform. We've done a lot in the auto reinsurance space in North Carolina, where essentially the reinsurance facility is a safety net for risky carriers, for lack of a better word, where their policies have been ceded by traditional insurance companies, and then the losses from that policy gets passed on to the motor carriers that have your regular run-of-the-mill commercial policy. And so it's kind of outrageous that we're having to bear that burden, and then the constant pressure is just the cost just keeps going up. All of our cost inputs are going up. You see that frequently with the latest ATRI data whenever it's released on operational costs of trucking. And so all these costs are going up, but freight rates have obviously, as you know, just not kept up with that.
Mm-hmm. No, it is. It's a very, I was, I try not to use the word challenging, because like at the end of the day, like it's not easy to run a business and own a business. Like it's literally the hardest path you can take in life at the end of the day, to go out on your own and try and make it. And especially in an industry that is as capital intensive as owning trucks and stuff like that. And, but I also look at it is like, this is also one of the last industries out there where you do not need a formal education to build a successful company, right? At the end of the day, I mean, a lot of it is work ethic and everything. But I look at it is coming as somebody who's literally been around this industry my entire life. I feel like we're at a very unique time now, Ben, where we have to use our voices in the right way to get the right attention out there. I think throwing temper tantrums on social media aren't going to get it, outside of, you might get a 5-second viral clip out there. But like, I feel like we do need more of the right people standing up out there to really fight this. But most importantly, again, this is Chris Jolly's opinion. We need our politicians to actually listen to us and really take what we're saying to heart. And I'm not going to talk about, campaign donations and stuff like that, but like, instead of the highest donor always getting a seat at the table, like, I feel like most people in everyday America out there, we don't feel like we're heard at all. And I want to see a lot of that change. And it's like seeing, individuals like yourself and other organizations out there fighting for this. Like, this is why I really want to push this avenue the most, because it's like, this is how you will get your voice heard out there in Capitol Hill, is if you're with an organization like the North Carolina Trucking Association, or hit up any state that you live in right now. They have a trucking association out there, and this is how you get involved.
No, that's 100% right. I tell people you have to have a team, right? If you see me, catch me ranting on social media, it's more about have a team. I'll hear your complaints, but if you're not doing something about it, at some point in time, I'm going to be tired of responding to them, right? Like put yourself in action. And I think truckers don't realize it as much as that we're the majority, like the vast majority, right? So you look at North Carolina and you look at any other state, in NC specifically, 1 in 15 employees in this state are in the transportation industry. So just pause and think about that for a second. And so imagine if those hundreds of thousands of employees were all able to take one day out of the year, go to the General Assembly together and say, enough is enough. We can't handle this anymore. You're putting us out of business. This is critical infrastructure. Do you want your milk, your eggs, your fuel, your medicine, your clothing, all of your necessities? Then you're going to have to provide some relief to us. That body will listen. And so that's what my job is trying to organize that team, grow that tent, and get those people together to just take one day out of the year and come tell your story. And you don't have to be a lobbyist or trained. You don't have to remember all the facts like I do. Everyone always says, well, you remember all these facts, and say, well, that's my job.
Yeah.
Your story is to tell what it's like on the road, right? What it's like to not be able to sleep at night because you're worried about a nuclear verdict out there for a collision that you didn't even cause.
Yeah.
That's what matters. That story is what's real, right? What I do is I'm able to facilitate and get people together to help share those stories. And that's how we've seen some success in the General Assembly and in Congress.
Do you think it's because the majority of business owners in transportation are small business? They don't feel like they have a seat at that table because they're like, oh, it's just me and two other drivers, or even the majority of freight brokerages out there, man,
right.
It's small business, right? So I feel like that might have a lot to do with it, where they're like, dude, I don't like my company does $2 million a year in revenue. What are they don't want to listen to me.
Yeah, and the answer is they do. But I think the other issue is they're just so busy, right? Like if you're that small business owner, how many hats are you wearing, right? And so the idea of giving up one day can just feel exhausting, particularly when you're getting pulled in so many different directions. What I would say, particularly with state level politics, is it makes such a huge difference, and it can actually get the job done in one meeting. And it's that legitimate. And our folks, people don't realize at the state level, these are part-time elected leaders, right? Yeah, Chris, I know we haven't talked before, but do you have any idea what your average state level politician gets paid from the state for their work?
Oh, I know in Arizona, it's like 25, 30 grand.
Yeah, so it's $14,000 or so in North Carolina. And, for their campaign, so a run-of-the-mill House campaign in North Carolina raises about $40,000. And so we have a PAC. A lot of organizations have a PAC. And people always hate the idea of money in politics, but it's a game that you have to play. But NCTA is able to make a contribution of, $2,000 to $3,000, and all of a sudden we're a top 4 donor for an elected leader. Now that's not buying anything, but it's you're getting time, right? And you're being able to tell those stories. And we've really built that momentum in North Carolina where everybody's voice actually does matter. We ask our folks to show up once a year. And we'll have a different group coming in every month. We don't want to overburden people, right? We don't want to ask our members to come, once a month for 7 months while they're in session. But hey, let's take all of our Western North Carolina transportation professionals. Let's bring them on this day. Let's take all of our young leaders and bring them in to meet with the freshman members of the General Assembly. Hey, let's take our board and let's go meet with transportation leadership. let's have a legislative reception where we ask everybody that can come up that couldn't come up the other days to kind of mix and mingle and tell these real stories. And it works. Like, look, we got booting banned in North Carolina this session, right? That's a huge deal. I'm sure you've probably had folks on that have complained about truck boots and how it's essentially highway piracy, right? Like you park it at Bojangles. I know Marina's had these issues out of Charlotte where you have a driver park it at Bojangles at 10:30 to get a biscuit. They're eating the biscuit in the cab of their truck. It rolls 11:01, and technically trucks aren't supposed to be there anymore. Within seconds, the truck's booted. You got to knock at the door, and it's $3,600 cash to take that boot off. Like,
Jesus.
make economic sense, right?
Yeah,
it's piracy.
Yeah, dude, and that's the thing. Like predatory towing, bringing up stuff like that, that's a whole other ball game out there. But I want to talk on the like the legislative side here in the state in stuff like that, because I feel like that's where you said something earlier that most individuals out there they don't have the time because they're trying to run their business, and I feel like that is, again, that's kind of like the sentiment of a lot of people is like, and I know that this was my dad's sentiment back in the day. He couldn't shut his business down to go somewhere, not only like pay for a ticket to go to a conference, flights, hotel, like he can't, like, he's not going to see the value in doing something like that when he's like, I got a truck payment, I got to replace this part on it when I get home and stuff like that. Like, they got other real things out there. So it's like, again, this is why, talking about this, because I'm assuming most people they think it's more of a time commitment, right? Than it actually is.
Right.
And it is like, you have to go out there and fight for this stuff, but you got to know what angles to take, because most individuals' opinions out there are going to be like, oh, I hate the government. Okay. But like, if we're going to fight them, how are we going to do it? Right. You can't just like post it out there. There's a way to go about this and do this and get your voice heard. And I look at it is like, if you have real complaints out there, complaining on social media isn't going to do anything about it. You got to find a way to do it, because if you want change, sometimes you're going to have to show up at the doorstep of state Congress and stuff like that and be like, hey guys, you got to listen to us now. Like, we're sick and tired of this. This is what's going on.
Right. No, that's 100% it. And, we make it easy on folks. It's usually a half-day commitment. There's obviously travel to get to Raleigh. But we can also do events in your backyard. And so if you're unable to do that and you've got a facility, invite your elected leader to come visit you at work. A lot of them would love to do that because they're trying to educate themselves on industry that they represent. And, we have our own tools that we work with that overlays the federal, NICMIS data, FMCSA data on top of legislative districts. And so we're able to really map out what's going on in every congressional district, in every state Senate, state House district, and provide that information to our leaders. But at the end of the day, you've got to be able to provide your story in some format. And we offer those opportunities. We don't charge people, for to come into Raleigh, because we know that we're all kind of helping move the law in a better direction for truckers. And we just need some relief, right? I mean, we're in year 3 or 4 of a freight recession, depending on when you start counting.
Yeah.
And we've got to get some relief. You talked about being under attack. It's a multi-front war, right? I mean, that's the reality. You've got nuclear verdicts, you've got predatory towing, you've got environmental policy that just doesn't make sense. You've got pressure on the independent contractor model. Like, you've got trade, right? When does it end, right? And so we've been able to chalk up some nice wins in some of those pieces, and not all of it's front burner right now. But the way all of that has happened is by folks taking the time and showing up and telling their story in some form or fashion.
No, you're right. I mean, speaking on, like environmental and even AB5 and stuff like that, which I've done plenty of episodes on that. And, it's an absolute assault on the independent contractor model of all industry, not just trucking.
Sure.
And, and that's how a lot of business owners go out and kind of get their footing, right? Because I don't know about you, Ben, but like, not everybody just has access to millions of dollars to go out there and start a company. Like, a lot of us bootstrap our way up, and, so it's like, it is, man. It's like, it's getting hard. And that's I feel like the perception out there, it's getting harder and harder to make it as an independent out there. And then on top of it too, like with everything that's kind of coming on with, visas, there's a lot of drivers who are here right now who are on work visas and stuff like that. And again, the way that I see it, man, as long as you're following the same laws and rules that I have to follow here, I fully support everybody's right to do that. But there's a lot of other things now where it's like, I look at it and what I don't like is how each state can operate differently in regards to like federal mandates, right? Like, and mandates might not be the right word there, but if we're looking at like CDLs and issuing of CDLs out there, how are some states able to issue a CDL without certain forms, but like other states have to use those forms to prove the validity of this stuff?
Yeah, they're not in compliance. I mean, I'll say it, you don't have to. It's just for a variety of reasons, there are states out there that are just not in compliance. They're just
Yeah.
not. And
Oh,
so, they'll claim budget, resources, et cetera, that it's impossible. But, well, that's a problem in itself. We got to find a way to right size that, right? Because we need consistency. And to your point, about the non domiciled CDLs, which is, a headline right now because of that tragic crash in Florida, we just need everybody following the same set of rules, right?
yes.
And so, taking a pause and taking a look at that, nobody can say that's a bad thing when you know that there are states out there that are not in compliance and that there can be some bad actors out there. So it's reasonable to stop and make sure that everyone's following the same playbook.
Yeah, and that's I mean, that is my literal stance on this, right? It's like, hey, the pause is good for now as long as something actually comes from it, right? Because it's like,
Sure.
I mean, I said this on my show the other day, and I'll say it again, man. I just have very little faith in the bureaucratic process that something's going to actually change because it's so politicized as an entire thing right now, and I'm just afraid that there are going to be states, and again, you can follow party lines out there, man. There's going to be states who are going to plant their flag and be like, we're not doing any of this because we
Yeah.
don't like this person. And it's like, and that's what I hate. And again, it's like what's being overshadowed is the lives that are lost on the freeway and other spots out there. And again, to tie in nuclear verdicts to all of this stuff, at the end of the day now, and there is, and I went and looked at all of this stuff. There is no specific line item on the crash data that says it was caused by a non-domiciled CDL. So
Sure.
any of those talking points out there are invalid and people are just spouting off. But every single traffic fatality where there is a CDL holder involved in it is eventually downstream going to affect insurance rates. It's
100%.
only going to continue to add up.
Yeah, no, that's 100% right. And people forget that the vast majority of these collisions are caused by the four-wheeler not acting right. Everyone's driving down the phone, looking at their TikTok or whatever else they're
What are they
doing,
doing?
causing these collisions. But the problem is that we've made trucking companies such soft targets, and they've got these minimum insurance requirements that you've got plaintiffs lawyers that are working on contingency. They're playing the lottery, right? It's like a scratch off. And so if I sign up 6 of these cases, I know 5 of them are not worth anything, but maybe something will stick. Maybe I can paint with a broad brush that this industry is not doing things right and ring a bell. And that's the reality that we're living in. And so these soft targets is what's just driving all this stuff up.
No, man, I couldn't agree more with that. Ben, I really appreciate your time, man. Like it's one of those things where I think we have to get more vocal as an industry. We have to do it the right way, and we have to like actually push for real policy change out there. And it does start with getting involved in your local trucking associations and, on the brokerage side, on the TIA and other advocacy groups that are out there, OIDA. It doesn't matter what it is. We got to get our voices heard out there because if we want change, you guys, it has to come from the people in the industry. Otherwise, there's going to be people making the decisions for us. And then we're all going to be sitting there putting our hands out like, how did this happen? It's because we didn't speak up. But Ben, how does anybody reach out to you to find out more or get involved with the North Carolina Trucking Association?
Yeah, nctrucking.com. It's that easy. I will make a pitch, while I'm on the air for your market. We're putting on our first inaugural, what we're calling NCTA Networking 2025 session. That'll be on October 16th in Colfax, North Carolina. Simple concept is we're trying to match people that have freight with people that need freight, right?
Yep.
Cargo theft and fraud is a huge issue. And so this is an opportunity as folks that are needing that capacity to actually meet the carriers in person. And so we're hoping to provide a nice environment to get all those groups together to be able to talk trucking, network. There's not going to be any presentations or anything. And so it's just all about getting people together in person, see each other. You're not dealing with somebody that bought an MC number, on Facebook Marketplace that's looking to steal your freight. And so we're really excited about that event. And so love to have people reach out if they're interested in attending. It is going to be open to non-members. So that's October 16th in Colfax. But you can find me on nctrucking.com. You can also find me ranting on social media from time to time, LinkedIn, X, all of those places. But I'd love to chat. I mean, I care about this stuff and I care about facilitating change. And I'm happy to put anybody in the right position to be able to advocate on their behalf.
Perfect. Ben, thank you so much. If you guys can't find Ben or the North Carolina Trucking Association out there, hit me up. I'll gladly put you guys in contact with him. But that's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling really ambitious after this one, rank the show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you saw value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything. Ayy, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the back. Ayy, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the